Okay, so I wanted to talk about septic systems today. This is something that we probably come across more often than we will anticipate. So it's just important to kind of have this basic knowledge of how septic systems work and what to do if you come across one in one of your transactions. So the form that we're going to be talking about mostly is going to be the 22S, although certain counties also have their own septic addendums like King County, Skagit County, but all of them kind of go over the same basic rules. So for the purpose of our discussion, I'm just going to be talking about the standard 22S, and I'll pull up a couple of the other ones as we get into this too, so you can see where they differentiate. So, septic systems. Being the industry leader also means we need to be versed in all things related to homes and systems that we sell to our clients. Knowing these will also give us the needed knowledge to fill out the forms and write our contracts correctly. So, what is a septic system? In short, it's an on-site sewage system. It is actually a really delicate system that requires monitoring and maintenance a little more than a city maintained sewer system. And the first thing we need to do is familiarize ourselves with how they work and the terminology, especially when we're going to be talking about these to our clients. So first and foremost, when you're putting a listing together, you're going to want to gather information to have attached to the listing regarding the septic system. This will include what they call the as-built or the site registration or both. The as-built is a drawing of how the septic system is designed and located within the property. These are filed with the county. So whatever county you're pulling from should have these on record. You're not always given these when you open up title. In fact, I don't think I've ever been given these when I open up title. These are things we have to go searching for and pull ourselves, but they are public knowledge, so they are accessible. To the right is an example of what an as-built looks like. Some of these can be a lot more primitive than others, but they're just hand-drawn drawings of the property. This right here is a representation of what a septic system looks like. So to kind of get familiar with the parts and pieces of this, I'll start with the yellow lines. The yellow lines right there are the drain field, and what they are just lines like PVC piping with holes in the bottom to kind of percolate the liquids downward into the soil. Now, in order to have the drain field there, your soil has to be a permeable soil. It has to be sandy enough to absorb. You can't put a septic system on anything hard like clay or hardpan. And when they design the septic system, each one of those lines represents a bedroom in the capacity for the usage. So each one of these lines represents one bedroom in the house. That's approved for the county. In this case, that would be a 3-bedroom house. The way they view capacity is 2 people per bedroom plus 1 extra person. So in this septic system right here, they're saying that 6 people plus 1 extra person, so 7 people can be living in this house with regular water usage, and this septic system will in fact support that. In this, they also draw out where the connections are. So that dark place in the middle is probably where there's a distribution box. They have different chambers that they've noted on here. And this drawing is again filed with the county under the as-built. This will usually be page 2 to the one that I showed previously. So it's more than a 1-page item. When they mount the septic system underground, they do try to make accessible everything you need in order to service the system. So risers are put over access points to the tank for pumping and inspections. Sometimes you'll have a riser put over a distribution box or some sort of baffle or something that will need to be replaced or maintained within that system. Now, depending on the type of septic system you have will depend on how many risers are put in and what you need access for. But at the very minimum, you do need access for the tank to be pumped. Once the risers are put in, they are screwed on with 4 screws and the ground is pushed around the side of them. So if you see these in the yard, it's because it's access to the septic system. This is how the tank looks underground. Everything comes in through the input baffle. It gets separated by gravity, and then the liquids are pumped into a second tank, which then are again settled and then pumped into a third, which goes out to the drain field. So everything out to the drain field should be completely liquid. What happens is over time, this does build up and build up and build up. So when you have it pumped, they really do want to get the solids out of the bottom. So you can again fill it up to have this go over and over and over. Here's an example of what a drain field looks like. So because I kind of have seen these before, the gravel underneath is mainly to make the soil under it permeable so the drain field can leach down into the soil. When something is redone like this, it's more than likely that the drain field was put on soil that was not able to absorb the rate of flow. And they kind of create what they need underneath it. Now this one right here, you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines. This is a 5-bedroom septic. So what happens during the inspection? When you fill out the 22S and you have a septic inspection in there, what does an inspector do? They will come out, find the lids. They will check for function of the tank. They will look for cracks in the tank. They'll run a hose in there and make sure that the drain field is actually leaching out properly. They will calculate the rate of flow, the rate of drain, and they will test the function of all the moving parts. So the septic system, if it operates by anything other than gravity alone, they're going to be inspecting all the pieces and parts of that. If it operates by gravity, what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll run a hose and just make sure everything leaches out at the rate that it should. So here's an example of a septic inspection. I did also put on here the various things they do inspect. Any deficiencies noted will be under the comments in the general inspection notes. These are filed with the health department. They are also available on the county website. Once they're filed, they are public knowledge. If your client has already had a septic inspection done and has one of these reports, I would highly advise you to connect it to the listing or have it readily available if you have a listing with a septic system. Now they can go ahead and have this inspected before it goes live, and they can wait to pump it till later. It's up to them if they want to do that. I wanted to also make note here that it's kind of deceiving when you look at these reports. The reports are very, very similar to a pumping report. The inspection and pumping use the same, the same letterhead, the same format. So make sure if you're actually in need of making an inspection report that you go ahead and look right up at the top. This one right here, it says inspection report. And then in the general systems, it does say fully inspected. So that's what you want to look for in an inspection report. If you have a pumping report that notes a couple things on it, that might also be in this, it's not technically an inspection. So you may be contractually obligated to still do a septic inspection. I wanted to put in a copy of a bill that one of my clients had for their septic inspection. They are not cheap. So these are definitely things that you're going to need to prepare your seller for. It is the seller's responsibility to make sure that they do have it inspected. This is not on the buyer. So knowing that they could be coming out of pocket, in this case, $1,400 is probably important. This does not include the pumping. This is only for the inspection. And in this particular inspection, they did replace the septic flow pump. This is an example of the pumping report. So it does look very, very similar to the septic inspection, but it is not an inspection. They do check a few things. So when it is pumped, they will look at how many gallons were pumped. They will look at specific things, but not a true inspection. Keep in mind too, if you do not have risers on the septic system and they have to locate them, there is an additional cost for that for your clients. I have had to pay that before, and my additional cost was $250. I don't know if that's a standard fee or if it was just what my septic inspector charged, but there would be additional fees if you can't identify and dig up where the access points are to the septic system.
Location.
So here's an example too of a septic pumping bill. So this is beyond just the inspection. This is additionally a pumping bill. So they may pay $1,400 for the inspection, then it needs to be pumped. In our case, it is charged per gallon. And we have to pay about $6 per gallon, and our pumping was $7.71 for a 1,000 gallon tank. So just doing this so you can not have so much sticker shock, you can properly prepare your sellers when it comes to what they're going to have to do. It's going to be about $2,500 to have a septic inspected and pumped. It's something that I would highly advise doing before the listing goes live, so you can connect all of these but all of these reports to your listing. You can potentially avoid having an additional contingency with septics by having all of this ready to go.
Right.
All right, so the septic addendum. We put the septic addendum in, right? So the septic addendum becomes a contingency when the proper boxes are checked. So check those boxes. Don't put it in the contract and leave everything blank. Fill out the boxes. It's actually arguable that if you put an addendum in the contract without checking boxes, it stays as just an addendum without creating too many obligations. So let's keep those boxes checked, fill in the blanks, fill them in. If they're not asking for additional time, then just fill it in with boilerplate time. It's technically considered sloppy to leave boxes blank in a contract. So best habit is to fill them all out.
Yes.
So right here, I pulled up the 22S. What you'll want to do. So the seller does represent that, to their knowledge, there is nothing that requires repair or maintenance other than normal maintenance. This is just a general, hey, the seller has given the disclosure on the Form 17. The seller has done the inspection and report, and beyond the knowledge discovered, there does not know that there's anything else that they have to disclose. If there is, then just disclose it. Also, by law, the seller cannot have a septic system that violates the federal laws, because the federal, county, and state laws will override if they're more strict. So an example of that would be, if you leave this out of a contract and the county requires it to be done, then it still needs to be done, whether it's in the real estate contract or not. So this is just kind of boilerplate for, take the responsibility off me, and I'm gonna promise to do my part. So if box 3 is used, then the seller does need to provide records of the on-site septic system. Like I said, if you do this before the listing goes live, you're going to have these ready to go. They might even be in attached docs. Line 4 just shows that there are city and county requirements. Particularly, I know in Island County, they require the pumping to be every 1 to 3 years, depending on the type of septic system. So those alternative ones, the ones that are higher maintenance, may require a yearly inspection, whereas a gravity fed system that is kind of a ignore it, life as usual, that might be an every 3 year just check on it. Line 5, the bank is going to require, if you have a buyer who is financing, to have this done within the last 12 months. So financing, they're going to definitely want to see that the septic has been pumped and inspected within 12 months. Now, as sellers, if you go to have the septic inspected and it does not require pumping, then they are not required to pump it. So do the inspection first. Then if it's required, go to step 2 and do the pumping. If you have not yet done the inspection, the buyer does have the right to ask to be present for the inspection. I have had kind of issues both ways. Sometimes if the buyer attends the inspection, there's a lot of questioning. Sometimes it makes it better, sometimes it makes it worse. I don't really know the situation for each person, but by not having this done prior and having the septic being inspected in buyer's presence, they do reserve the right to attend. And then the general contingency timeline is in line 6. So this is once they receive the report, they can just look at the report and technically, for any reason whatsoever, either accept or deny this within the timeline that they've decided. King County has everything else being the same. The King County Health Code is the same that requires the maintenance to be done. They have health codes they reference. Inspection and contingency are the same. The only difference is they do a different timeline for the inspection and the pumping. There's change from 15 days and must be pumped within 6 months. So county specific. Skagit County, also county specific. The general idea is exactly the same, meaning still seller's responsibility. They are still going to provide maintenance records. Their timelines, though, are 10 days and 6 months, county specific. Inspection contingency, still the same on the bottom. I just wanted to pull these up so you can see there are very minute differences in these, but the idea with them remains the same throughout. So what if there is no addendum for the purchase and sale agreement for the septic? Is the seller required to get the inspection? And does the buyer have the right to back out if there is an inspection done and something gets called out? So the answer is, if the county requires the inspection to be done, then the inspection is required. Certain systems, like I said before, will require more monitoring than others, and gravity systems could be every 3 years that they're required, whereas other alternative systems might be yearly. The seller is technically on the hook to comply with those rules. They're still supposed to file with the health department, but there's no contingency in place. So a buyer being able to back out based on the findings is just not possible if there's no contingency. I know in Island County, it is legal for a seller to conduct their own inspection of the septic system. They can take a class, they can complete the inspection, and they can file it with the county. So knowing who inspected it is also something you might want to just keep in mind. Some of these outlying counties are maybe not quite as strict as King and Snohomish County. So I wanted to bring up some basic sort of knowledge. So while you're out showing, and questions come up, or just so you know what you're talking about, these are just kind of like septic system tribal knowledge here. The weight of heavy machinery or vehicles over the drain field will compact it and destroy the ability to percolate. So do not drive anything, build anything over a drain field. If you look at the as-built and you notice there are things parked on top of it, or a building is on top of it, that area will not be a functioning drain field. I also didn't write this on here, but every property is also supposed to have a reserve drain field area. So if you're looking at a property map and you see the drain field area and the reserve drain field area, also make sure there's nothing over the reserve drain field area. Strong or prolonged use of antibiotics, cancer medications, those will destroy a septic system. They will not be able to use the drain field whatsoever. It actually kind of gums up everything that's solid and creates a tar that hardens and makes your entire system unusable. The tank, the drain field, all the pipes. So it just kills the bacteria, and you need bacteria to break down in the tank. So if you do have a situation where you know there are medications present, or even the overuse of bleach or cleaners that are antibiotic type cleaners, you're going to want to either pump it every 3 months, or as a buyer, make sure that drain field and the alternative drain field or the reserve drain field are going to be intact. Concrete tanks can break down over a period of time, and they will need to be replaced. We went away from concrete tanks to some plastic tanks. Concrete just breaks down. And every time the tank is pumped, the hose gets down there and it's banging around inside. And then they spray high pressure water hoses. So think about how maybe roads and driveways erode with concrete. That's what happens to the inside of the septic tanks. So they do have a lifespan. A septic replacement, if you need it done, is going to run at least $20,000. And I'm talking from tank to drain field, the whole thing. I'm not talking pieces of it. Pieces of it are not the same. The most common replacement for a septic system is going to be what they call the intake baffle, which is about a $50 part plus labor. Those are really inexpensive in the grand scheme of things. If you have a client with a septic system and the percolation rate is slow, but still happening, there is a good chance that those lines need to be cleaned out and the septic system is just fine. Do keep in mind, though, that septic systems have a lifespan of approximately 20 to 30 years. And if you are looking at an older home, you may have to be replacing some of these larger ticket items.